So let's talk about something, namely how banks are crooks. I recently read an article about how the banks in my country are spiking their interest rates on savings accounts, on checkings accounts, on pretty much any sort of accounts, and of course, with respect to loans and mortgages. So the recent most interest rate bump from the national bank in my country meant that the principal interest, the governing interest, increased by 0.25%, which meant that most banks, of course, increased their mortgage interest rate by 0.25% in concordance with the governing interest rate. However, there are other types of accounts in banks, such as a savings account. And as part of the interest rate increase, they also raised the interest rate on the savings account, but only by half of that which they raised the loan margins or the interest on loans with. In other words, loans got 0.25% more expensive, but you only gained a 0.15 or even 0.10% interest rate increase in your savings account. In other words, they don't want you to save money. They want you to borrow money so that they make more money, of course. They're crooks. They're scammers. This is so obvious. This is how the banks make money. They want you to be a slave. They want you to empty your bank account, to use whatever you have in savings as collateral, going to the bank, requesting a mortgage for a big badass house that you need to own because you need to own a house. Otherwise, you're doomed. Otherwise, you're a loser. So you need to own the house, which, by the way, you don't own because the bank is owning the house. If you take out a mortgage, like let's say $2 million mortgage, or worse, $3 or $4 million mortgage. I don't know what the house price is. Let's be realistic, by the way. Let's say $700,000, which still is a lot of money. A loan consisting of $700,000 with $70,000 as collateral, 10%. So you have $630,000 in loan that you owe the bank. Well, now what happens? On paper, it might be, maybe the home is in your name, but you don't own the home. You don't own the house. No, the bank does. When you pay down half of that mortgage, you can claim 50% ownership of the house. And when you pay down the mortgage in full, you can theoretically claim 100% ownership of the house. But then let's say that the state intervenes and says that, no, we're going to build a road through your property. You have to move. This has happened before. It's going to happen again. Or, oh no, there's a migrant crisis. You're going to have to forfeit your house to migrants. Or it's a war, or it's a warlike scenario. The military has to use your home for practicing warfare in, civilian neighborhoods. Whatever. That could happen. All these scenarios might sound unrealistic, but they are realistic. And my point is this. This rant has, by the way, developed into my arguments against house ownership instead of how the banks are scamming it. But don't worry, I'm going to get back to that conclusion. Or don't worry, I'm going to get back to that discussion. My point was simply this. You may think you own the home that you purchased, but you don't because it's the bank's. And so the bank is owning the house because they lend you the money. And they even raise the interest rate on your mortgage. And let's say that you have a savings account, but the interest rate on your mortgage was elevated by 0.25%. But the interest rate on your savings account was only elevated by 0.15% or even by 0.10%. Where's the fairness in that? Why aren't they elevating the interest on your loan and the interest on your savings account as much? Why aren't they elevating it evenly? I mean, you tell me. It's hard to make another case than, oh, the banks want you to borrow money so that they can make more money, because they don't make money if you keep your money in a savings account versus if you borrow money from them. It's pretty obvious. Hence the higher interest rate. I mean, what's the interest rate on a savings account these days? 1.25 or something percent versus 4.50 or even 4.75% for a house mortgage. It's crazy. It's insane. You obviously understand whence the banks are coming from. They want you to make, they don't want you to make money. They want to make money from you by making you borrow money from them. It's obvious. If you want to learn more about business and sales and persuasion, get subscribed to my email list. The link to do so is in the episode description wherever you're watching and or listening to this, and I'll see you there.